The library in the Whitmore estate was exactly what you'd expect from old Connecticut money. Floor-to-ceiling mahogany shelves, leather-bound first editions, Persian rugs, and enough square footage to house 3 average families. Diana Foster sat cross-legged on the floor with 6-year-old Emma Whitmore, reading Where the Wild Things Are for the 3rd time that week. "Again," Emma demanded when Diana closed the book. "Sweetheart, it's almost dinner time. Your mother said, 'Please, Miss Diana, just once more.'" Diana smiled, unable to resist the child's enthusiasm. Emma was bright, curious, hungry for stories in a way that reminded Diana of her own daughter, Maya, waiting at home in their small Bronx apartment. They were halfway through Max's journey when Catherine Whitmore appeared in the doorway, martini glass in hand, impeccable even at 5 p.m. in her Chanel suit. "Emma, darling, go wash up for dinner. Your father will be home soon." "But Mom, we're not finished." "Now, Emma." The child reluctantly left, and Catherine's attention shifted to Diana with the particular coldness of someone who viewed household staff as necessary inconveniences. "Miss Foster, may I ask why my daughter is sitting on the library floor reading children's books when she should be practicing piano?" Diana stood, carefully marking their place in the book. "Mrs. Whitmore, Emma finished her piano practice at 4. We've been reading since—" "Reading?" Catherine said it like a diagnosis. "Yes, I've noticed you do quite a lot of that with my children. Yesterday, I found Emma trying to explain photosynthesis to her brother. She's 6 years old. She asked about how plants grow. I thought, you thought. That's the problem, Miss Foster. You're not employed to think or to teach. You're employed to supervise, to ensure my children are safe, fed, and occupied while I manage this household and my husband manages his career." Catherine took a sip of her martini. "Emma's education will be handled by Exeter and eventually Yale, not by a nanny reading picture books." Diana felt the familiar weight of condescension, the casual dismissal that came from people who'd never had to work for anything in their lives. But she needed this job. Maya's school tuition was due next month, and nanny work in Greenwich paid better than adjunct teaching positions in the city. "I understand, Mrs. Whitmore. I'll focus more on supervised play. See that you do. And Miss Foster? Perhaps less conversation with the children about your own background. Emma mentioned something about you having a daughter at Columbia Prep. I'd prefer you keep your personal life separate from your professional duties." The implication stung. That Diana's life, her daughter, her struggles were somehow inappropriate topics around children whose trust funds would pay for generations of Whitmore privilege. That evening, Diana returned to the Bronx on the Metro North, exhausted and frustrated. The job paid $800 a week, significant money for her, but pocket change to a family that spent more on their landscaping budget. She'd taken it specifically because the hours allowed her to attend evening classes for her MBA at NYU while Maya was at her after-school program. Diana Foster had a bachelor's from Columbia in early childhood education and was halfway through a business degree she was funding one class at a time. But to families like the Whitmores, she would always just be the nanny. The breaking point came 3 weeks later. Diana had started a reading program with both Emma and her 8-year-old brother Christopher. Nothing formal, just 30 minutes each evening where they'd read together, discuss stories, act out scenes. The children loved it. They were learning to think critically, ask questions, engage with literature beyond simple comprehension. Richard Whitmore discovered them in the library, performing an improvised scene from Charlotte's Web. Emma was Charlotte, Christopher was Wilbur, and Diana was narrating while they acted out the barnyard drama with enthusiastic 6- and 8-year-old energy. "What is going on here?" Richard's voice cut through the children's laughter. The kids froze. Diana stood, smoothing her clothes. "Mr. Whitmore, I didn't hear you come in. The children and I were just playing theater? Is this what we're paying you for?" "Dad, it's so fun," Christopher enthused. "Miss Diana helps us understand the books better when we act them out. Did you know Charlotte's Web is actually about mortality and, Christopher, go to your room. Emma, you too." "But Dad." "Now." The children fled, casting worried glances at Diana. Richard closed the library doors, and Diana's stomach dropped. In 3 months working for the Whitmores, she'd rarely interacted with Richard beyond polite greetings. He was a managing partner at a prestigious Manhattan law firm, typically home after the children were in bed. "Miss Foster, I've been speaking with my wife about some concerns regarding your approach to childcare. If there's something I'm doing wrong, I'd like to address you're doing several things wrong. First, you're overstepping your role. You're a nanny, not a teacher. We have tutors for academic instruction. Your job is supervision, not education. Mr. Whitmore, encouraging reading and creative thinking doesn't interfere with them. Second," Richard continued as if she hadn't spoken, "you're exposing my children to ideas and discussions above their developmental level. My wife tells me Emma asked her yesterday about economic inequality because you mentioned something about different families having different resources. She's 6, Miss Foster. 6-year-olds shouldn't be thinking about class disparities." Diana's hands clenched. "With respect, sir, I was answering her question about why some of her classmates live in apartments while she lives in a house. I didn't initiate. That's exactly the problem. You answer these questions with your perspective, your worldview, your experiences. But your experiences aren't relevant to my children's lives. They come from a specific background, with specific expectations and a specific future. Your job is to maintain their routine, not expose them to other perspectives." The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Diana understood perfectly. She was black, working class, from the Bronx. Her daughter attended Columbia Prep on scholarship, and Richard Whitmore didn't want his children learning that people like Diana could be educated, articulate, or intellectually capable. "Mr. Whitmore, I have a bachelor's degree from Columbia, and I'm pursuing an MBA from NYU. I'm not just a nanny. I'm a professional using my education and experience to provide quality childcare." Richard's expression hardened. "That's the third problem. You don't know your place." The phrase dropped like a stone. Diana felt herself go very still. "My place." "You're presenting yourself as our equal, as if your Columbia education and your MBA pursuit make you our peer. But they don't, Miss Foster. You're the help. A well-educated employee, perhaps, but still an employee. And when you blur those lines, when you make my children think of you as a teacher or mentor rather than household staff, you create confusion about social structures they need to understand." Diana's voice was quiet but steady. "Social structures? You mean that some people are born to own libraries and others are born to clean them? I mean that the world has hierarchies. My children will occupy certain positions in that hierarchy. They need to understand that, accept it, operate within it effectively. And they can't do that if they see me, a black woman from the Bronx, as someone capable of teaching them things." Richard's silence was answer enough. "I'd like 2 weeks' notice," Diana said finally. "I'll start looking for a replacement immediately." "That won't be necessary. You're terminated effective today. You'll receive 2 weeks' severance. Please collect your things and leave. The children, they'll want to say goodbye." "The children will be fine. They're resilient. Besides, Miss Foster, you've been here 3 months. You're hardly an irreplaceable figure in their lives." Diana gathered her belongings, a few children's books she'd brought from home, her bag, her dignity as best she could maintain it. As she walked through the marble foyer toward the front door, she saw Emma peering through the staircase railings, tears streaming down her face. "Miss Diana?" the little girl whispered. Diana forced a smile and blew her a kiss, then left the Whitmore estate for the last time. On the train back to the Bronx, Diana cried silently into her coat sleeve, not just from humiliation or anger, but from the crushing weight of knowing that no matter how hard she worked, how educated she became, how competent she proved herself, to people like the Whitmores, she would always be the help who didn't know her place. At home that night, Maya found her mother on the couch, staring at nothing. "Mom." "What's wrong?" Diana looked at her 12-year-old daughter, brilliant, curious, already talking about Harvard or MIT for college, and made a decision. "Baby, I need to tell you about something that happened today. And then I need you to help me make a plan." Diana told Maya everything. About the Whitmores, about being fired for being too educated, about Richard's speech on social hierarchies and knowing your place. "That's not fair," Maya said, her voice shaking with anger. "You're smarter than them. You work harder than them. They're just lucky. They're lucky. Born into money, into privilege, into a system designed to keep them on top and people like us below." Diana took her daughter's hands. "But Maya, here's what I want you to understand. Right now, at 12, the most important thing you can do is prove people like Richard Whitmore wrong. Not with anger, not with arguments, but with undeniable success." "What do you mean?" "I mean we're going to work harder than we've ever worked. I'm going to finish my MBA, and you're going to finish at Columbia Prep with grades so good that Harvard begs you to attend. And then, Maya, we're going to build something so successful that people like the Whitmores have to respect us. Not because they want to, but because they have to." Maya wiped her eyes. "Like a business? Like an empire? One that shows everyone that being just a nanny doesn't mean you're less capable, less intelligent, or less worthy. It just means you haven't had your opportunity yet." Diana didn't know, couldn't possibly know, that 20 years later she would build exactly that empire. That her daughter would graduate Harvard summa cum laude and join her in building Foster Technologies into a Fortune 500 company. That Christopher Whitmore, the 8-year-old boy who'd acted out Charlotte's Web, would one day sit across from Diana in a job interview, desperate for a position at the company that now dominated his industry. But that reckoning was 2 decades away. For now, there was just a mother and daughter in a small Bronx apartment, making a promise to each other that they would rise so high that no one could ever tell them to know their place again. Because they would define their own place, and it would be at the top. 20 years is a long time to carry anger. Diana Foster learned to transform hers into fuel. The first 5 years were brutal. She finished her MBA while working 2 jobs, day shift at a corporate daycare, nights as a bookkeeper for small businesses. Maya thrived at Columbia Prep, became valedictorian, got into Harvard on full scholarship. Diana's MBA thesis focused on childcare industry inefficiencies, how quality care was either unaffordable for working families or unprofitable for providers. Her professors called it promising but impractical. She proved them wrong. Foster Family Services started in 2010 with 1 location in the Bronx. Diana's model was revolutionary. Pay caregivers actual living wages, provide benefits and training, charge rates middle-class families could afford. Traditional wisdom said it couldn't work. Diana made it work through operational efficiency and scale. By 2015, she had 12 locations across New York. By 2018, 50 locations in 6 states. The company went public in 2020, and Diana became one of the few Black female CEOs of a publicly traded company. But Foster Family Services was just the foundation. Diana diversified into educational technology, developing learning apps that made quality early education accessible. Then, corporate consulting, helping companies build family-friendly workplace policies. By 2025, Foster Technologies was a Fortune 500 company with 8,000 employees and $2.3 billion in annual revenue. Maya joined the company after Harvard, leading their technology division. Mother and daughter built an empire that proved children's education and family services could be both profitable and transformative. The Connecticut Business Journal profiled Diana in 2024. From Nanny to CEO, how Diana Foster built a billion-dollar company. The article mentioned her time working for wealthy Greenwich families, though not by name. Diana had never publicly discussed the Whitmores. Revenge, she'd learned, was most effective when it appeared as success rather than retaliation. She thought about them occasionally. Catherine with her martinis and casual cruelty, Richard with his lectures about social hierarchies. She wondered if they'd read about her success, if they ever connected the nanny they'd fired to the CEO, now dominating headlines. She got her answer on a Tuesday morning in March 2025. "Diana, your 10 a.m. is here." Her assistant's voice came through the intercom. Diana reviewed the candidate file on her screen. Christopher Whitmore, 28, MBA from Wharton, 5 years at McKinsey, applying for Director of Strategic Planning, a senior position reporting directly to her. She'd seen the name when HR sent the shortlist 2 weeks ago. She'd almost asked them to remove him from consideration. Almost. But Diana Foster hadn't built a Fortune 500 company by making decisions based on emotion. If Christopher Whitmore was the best candidate, he deserved a fair interview. And if he happened to be the 8-year-old boy who'd once acted out Charlotte's Web in his family library, well, that was simply coincidence. Send him in. Christopher Whitmore entered her corner office with the confident stride of someone who'd never doubted his place in the world. Tall, professionally groomed, wearing a suit that cost more than Diana used to make in a month as his nanny. He didn't recognize her, not even a flicker. Ms. Foster, thank you so much for taking this meeting personally. Christopher extended his hand. I'm incredibly impressed by what you've built with Foster Technologies. The market disruption in early childhood education alone is remarkable. Diana shook his hand, gesturing to the chair across from her desk. Thank you, Mr. Whitmore. I've reviewed your resume. Wharton, McKinsey, impressive background. Walk me through why you want to leave consulting for corporate strategy. For 45 minutes, they discussed business transformation, market positioning, growth strategies. Christopher was sharp, well-prepared, articulate. He'd clearly researched Foster Technologies thoroughly, understood their competitive advantages, had thoughtful ideas about expansion opportunities. Diana found herself grudgingly impressed. This wasn't the privileged child coasting on his family name. He'd actually developed skills, business acumen, strategic thinking. Tell me about your family background, Diana said, watching his face carefully. My father's a managing partner at Whitmore & Associates, corporate law. My mother manages philanthropic initiatives. Christopher smiled slightly. Pretty traditional Connecticut family, honestly. They expected me to join the firm, but I wanted to build something rather than maintain something. That must have been a difficult conversation. It was. My father still thinks I'm going through a phase. Christopher leaned forward slightly. But I've spent 5 years watching companies transform industries, and I want to be part of that transformation rather than just advising it. Foster Technologies represents exactly the kind of mission-driven growth I want to contribute to. Diana nodded slowly. Your resume mentions you speak Spanish fluently. That's unusual for someone from your background. Our nanny growing up was from Guatemala. She taught me and my sister basic Spanish when we were kids. He said it casually, like mentioning a music lesson. Just your nanny? What about your parents? Christopher's smile faltered slightly. My parents didn't really engage with household staff beyond giving instructions. Looking back, it was pretty... He paused, searching for the word. Dehumanizing, actually. These were people working in our home, caring for us, and my parents treated them like furniture. How old were you when you noticed that? College, maybe? I took a sociology course on class and labor, and it clicked. All these women, mostly women of color, who raised kids like me while their own children were in daycare or with relatives. The inequity was staggering once I saw it. Diana kept her expression neutral. Did you ever think about the nanny who taught you Spanish? Wonder what happened to her. Sometimes. Actually, there was one nanny in particular. We only had her for a few months when I was 8. She used to read to us, help us understand books beyond just the story. I remember she made me think about literature differently. Christopher's face showed genuine nostalgia. My parents fired her, though I never understood why. She was the best caregiver we'd had. Do you remember her name? Christopher frowned. Diana something, maybe? God, I was 8, but I remember she was kind, patient, made learning feel important. I've actually thought about trying to find her, thank her for those months. She probably doesn't know how much impact she had. Diana stood, walking to her office windows overlooking Manhattan. From here, she could see 3 of her company's locations dotting the skyline. Childcare centers where caregivers earned $65,000 a year with full benefits, where children's education was taken seriously, where knowing your place meant recognizing everyone's inherent worth. Mr. Whitmore, let me tell you a story. Diana turned to face him. 20 years ago, a woman worked as a nanny for a wealthy Connecticut family. She had a bachelor's from Columbia, was pursuing her MBA at night. She loved the children she cared for, read to them, encouraged curiosity, helped them think critically. Christopher's expression began to change, recognition dawning slowly. The parents fired her after 3 months, said she was too educated, didn't know her place. The father specifically told her that her background and perspective weren't relevant to his children's lives, that she was the help and needed to remember social hierarchies. Christopher had gone pale. "Ms. Foster, are you—" "That woman was me, Mr. Whitmore. You were 8 years old. We read Charlotte's Web together and acted out scenes in your library. Your parents terminated me the day your father found us performing barnyard drama." The silence was absolute. Christopher stared at her, his professional composure completely shattered. "Oh my God, Diana, I didn't recognize—" He stood abruptly, then sat back down, clearly unsure of protocol. "Ms. Foster, I'm so sorry. What my parents did was inexcusable. The way they treated you, treated all our household staff. Your parents treated me exactly how society had taught them people like me should be treated. They weren't uniquely cruel, just uniquely honest about their worldview." Diana returned to her desk. "The question is whether you've actually learned different values or whether you've just learned to express the same prejudices more politely. I'd like to think I've learned. The sociology course I mentioned, it was a catalyst. I started seeing how privilege operates, how systems maintain inequality. I started questioning everything my parents taught me about natural hierarchies and who deserves what. And yet you still wanted to join my company without acknowledging our connection, our history. Because I didn't recognize you, Ms. Foster. I swear I had no idea. But you should have researched the CEO you wanted to work for. My background is public, that I worked as a nanny in Greenwich while finishing my MBA, that I used those experiences to understand childcare industry failures. If you'd done genuine research rather than just reviewing financial statements, you'd have known." Christopher absorbed this, nodded slowly. "You're right. That's a failure of due diligence and a failure of respect. I approached this like any corporate opportunity rather than understanding the human story behind the company." Diana studied him for a long moment. "I'm going to tell you what I've never told anyone publicly. The day your father fired me, I went home and cried, not just from humiliation, but from rage at a system that told me I could get educated, work hard, do everything right, and still be dismissed as just the help by people who'd never earned anything. I can't imagine, but that night I made my daughter a promise that we'd build something so successful that people like your father would have to respect us. Not want to, have to, and we did exactly that." Diana leaned forward. "So here's your question, Christopher. Why should I hire you, the son of the man who told me to know my place, to work for a company built by the woman he considered beneath his children?" Christopher took a long breath. "Honestly, you probably shouldn't. There's poetic justice in rejecting me the way my parents rejected you. I'd understand if you did. That's not an answer, that's self-pity. You're right." Christopher met her eyes directly. "You should hire me because I'm good at what I do, because I can contribute meaningfully to your company's growth, and because, if you'll permit me to be blunt, having someone with my background and connections advocating for your mission inside traditional corporate spaces serves your goals." Diana raised an eyebrow. "Instrumentalizing your privilege for my benefit?" "Yes. I can't undo what my parents did or change that I benefited from systems designed to advantage people like me. But I can use that advantage to amplify voices that traditionally get silenced, to open doors that traditionally stay closed." He paused, and selfishly, I'd like to work somewhere that actually aligns with my values, rather than perpetuating the hierarchies I was raised to accept. Diana was quiet for a long moment. "You're hired, Mr. Whitmore. Pending successful reference checks and background verification, standard 6-month probationary period. You'll report to me directly, which means I'll know immediately if your commitment to equity is performative rather than genuine." Christopher looked stunned. "Ms. Foster, thank you. I won't let you down. See that you don't. Because 20 years ago, your father told me I didn't know my place. Now I'm defining what that place is, at the top. And you'll help me prove that the woman he dismissed as just a nanny built something his son desperately wants to be part of. Is that understood? Yes, ma'am. Completely. 6 months later, Christopher Whitmore proved himself invaluable. He opened doors Diana's company had struggled to access. Old money investment networks, traditional corporate partnerships, Ivy League recruiting pipelines. His probation ended with glowing reviews. But the real test came when Catherine and Richard Whitmore arrived unannounced at Foster Technologies headquarters. Diana's assistant looked panicked. "Ms. Foster, there's a couple here insisting on seeing you. They say they're Christopher Whitmore's parents, and it's urgent." Diana felt a cold satisfaction. "Send them in." Catherine entered first, older now, but still carrying that martini glass elegance. Richard followed, silver-haired, expensive suit, the bearing of someone unaccustomed to waiting. Neither recognized her. "Ms. Foster, I'm Richard Whitmore, and this is my wife, Catherine. We need to discuss our son Christopher's employment here." Diana gestured to chairs. "Please, sit." "What concerns do you have about Christopher's performance?" "We're not here about his performance," Catherine said sharply. "We're here because he's made a terrible mistake joining your company. Christopher has opportunities at established firms, yet he's wasting his Wharton degree on some childcare startup. Fortune 500 company," Diana corrected mildly, "with $2.3 billion in annual revenue." Richard waved dismissively. "Regardless, Christopher belongs in traditional corporate law or finance. His grandfather founded Whitmore and Associates. There's a legacy to maintain. And Christopher chose a different path. Because you've manipulated him somehow." Catherine leaned forward. "He's talking about income inequality and caregiver wages and social responsibility. That's not how we raised him." "Perhaps that's the problem," Diana said quietly. "How you raised him." Richard's eyes narrowed. "Excuse me? Do you remember me, Mr. and Mrs. Whitmore?" They stared blankly. 20 years ago, I worked in your home for 3 months. I was your children's nanny. You fired me for being too educated, for not knowing my place." Diana's voice remained calm. "You specifically told me, Mr. Whitmore, that my Columbia degree and MBA pursuit didn't make me your equal, that I was the help and needed to understand social hierarchies." The color drained from both their faces. "That nanny built this company. The woman you dismissed is now your son's boss, and Christopher is thriving here precisely because he rejected the values you tried to instill, the belief that some people matter more than others based on birth or wealth." Catherine found her voice first. You planned this. You hired Christopher to—" "I hired Christopher because he's qualified and he genuinely wants to contribute to meaningful work. Unlike you, I evaluate people on competence and character, not their last name or zip code." Richard stood abruptly. "Christopher is leaving this company, today." "No, he's not." Christopher's voice came from the doorway. He entered, his expression a mixture of embarrassment and determination. "I heard you were here, and I'm staying. Christopher, this woman has a vendetta. This woman gave me an opportunity you never did, to build something that matters rather than just maintaining inherited wealth and status." Christopher looked at his parents. "For 28 years, you taught me that people like Diana Foster existed to serve people like us. That education and hard work only mattered if you came from the right background." "We taught you reality," Richard said coldly. "You taught me prejudice. Diana taught me reality, that the nanny you fired for being too educated built an empire while maintaining her integrity. That's the person I want to learn from." Catherine's voice shook. "You're choosing her over your own family? I'm choosing dignity over dynasty." "There's a difference." The Whitmores left, furious and humiliated. Christopher remained, standing awkwardly in Diana's office. "I'm sorry you had to do that," Diana said gently. "I'm not." They needed to hear it, and I needed to say it. He smiled slightly. "Though I might be disinherited now. You'll be fine. You're earning your own way. That's worth more than any trust fund." 5 years later, Foster Technologies expanded internationally. Diana's face appeared on Fortune's cover, the nanny who built a billion-dollar empire. The article detailed her journey, named the Whitmores, quoted Richard's "Know Your Place" comment. It sparked national conversation about class, race, and who gets to define success. Christopher became VP of Global Strategy. Emma Whitmore, the 6-year-old who'd loved being read to, reached out via LinkedIn. She was a teacher now, working in underserved communities, teaching children whose parents society dismissed as just custodians or just service workers. "You taught me something my parents never could," Emma wrote, "that everyone deserves dignity and respect regardless of their job title. Thank you for those 3 months 20 years ago. They shaped who I became." Diana read the message to Maya, now COO of Foster Technologies. "You did it, Mom. You proved them all wrong." "No, baby. I proved myself right. That knowing your place doesn't mean accepting where others put you. It means defining your place so high they have to look up to see you." And from the top floor of Foster Technologies headquarters, overlooking a city full of parents and children and caregivers, Diana Foster had built a place where everyone could rise, because she'd learned that the best revenge isn't destroying those who tried to limit you. It's becoming so successful they have to respect you, and hiring their children to help build your vision.